Hey, what's up guys? Mikey here. Everything around me is just so fast lately. I mean, just look at my shelf over there and how fast the amiibo are. I want something that goes by slower today. And I have two options for that. A snail race or jury duty. The Great Snail Race is the episode where Squidward insults Gary, so SpongeBob enters Gary into a snail race but pushes Gary way too hard. This episode aired on January 24, 2003, and is the first episode of the series to air in the year 2003. It also introduces Squidward's snail Snelly, who never appears again, and is not the first episode where Squidward's last name is said on screen.
Squidward's last name is Tentacles?
Poor guy.
The actual first time is episode 19, Opposite Day from season 1.
Absolutely, Mr. Tentacles. I can sell your home in a heartbeat.
Now this episode is notorious for how SpongeBob treated Gary during the race, and is considered to be one of the worst episodes of the show. Possibly the worst of the series if it didn't continue past the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. Now in terms of how I feel about it, I have bashed episode 74, I'm Was Stupid from season 2, in the past for how Patrick betrayed SpongeBob and milked it. This episode is another bad one for very similar reasons. However, after the rewatch, I have quite a bit more to say about it than I thought I did. So let's check out this episode to see where I personally think it stands. So the episode starts up and SpongeBob plays a horn when he wakes up in the morning. Outside, he questions the camera panning, and then it stops at Squidward's house as a mailman arrives with a package. Squidward was happy to receive it, but pissed when the mailman mispronounced Squidward's last name, and SpongeBob and Patrick were surprised that his last name was Tentacles. They were all neighbors for how long, and they didn't know Squidward's last name? Squidward's delivery was a new snail named Snelly. SpongeBob thought Gary would get to play with her, but Squidward, of course, wouldn't let Snelly play with him because she's a certified purebred snail. Squidward then brings up the Bikini Bottom snail race on Sunday. Squidward says SpongeBob couldn't enter Gary because Gary couldn't stand a chance at winning and is a mutt. A mutt is a type of dog, which is a worm in SpongeBob's world, so therefore, Gary is not an actual mutt. SpongeBob got offended, but Squidward left with Snelly. Patrick decided to get a snail himself and enter it into the race. SpongeBob told Gary he would enter him in the race and beat Snelly. He got dressed in a coaching uniform, and Sandy walked by with the urge to kick SpongeBob's butt tomorrow. Yeah, sure, buddy, whatever you want. SpongeBob made a protein shake that may be a bit dangerous because he put nails in it. Gary ran away to not drink the shake, and Patrick arrived with his snail, which was just a rock, albeit a rock with nerves of steel. Gary was watching TV when SpongeBob took him outside to start training. He wanted Gary to do a sprint, but Gary went back inside and watched TV again. Squidward said Gary wouldn't win against Snelly, but Patrick said his snail Rocky would be the winner. Squidward left and Patrick fell down, so SpongeBob took Gary outside.
You can run, but you can't hide, SquarePants!
He's not trying to run or hide. SpongeBob starts acting like the most brutal high school gym teacher imaginable, even pushing Gary while he's just eating or sleeping. The next day, Gary was too tired to compete in the big race, but SpongeBob made Gary take him to the stadium itself. Inside, Nad was introducing the 102nd annual snail race before getting caught by Perch Perkins' light. The mayor introduced the winner of the very first snail race, Lightning Larry Luciano, to light the torch of good sportsmanship. Larry slowly slithered over to the center stage. 2 hours later, the mayor just grabbed Lightning Larry and lit the torch himself. At the starting line, SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward were talking, and Gary was still too tired and weak to compete. The official came out to start the race. The guys talked to their snails before the race began, and when the official waved his flag, Snelly set off, but not Gary or Rocky. SpongeBob yelled at Gary to leave the starting line and race after Snelly. After much shouting, Gary finally set off, but he was too tired. SpongeBob's constant yelling caused Gary's eyeballs to explode and get a blown head gasket. SpongeBob finally realized Gary was suffering, but it was too late because he lost control and hit the wall twice, and the crowd cheered. Are they cheering because Gary got hurt, or because he survived the crash? SpongeBob ran onto the track and got Gary disqualified from the race. SpongeBob finally felt bad about pushing Gary too hard, and right before Snelly was about to win, she went back to Gary. He instantly healed himself and fell in love with Snelly. The crowd thought it was very cute, which didn't confuse me this time. But since Snelly didn't win, Rocky ended up winning instead, to Patrick's delight and Squidward's disappointment. But luckily, Patrick had the trophy engraved to Squidward instead, even though he messed up Squidward's last name again. SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward laughed before Sandy came in and kicked SpongeBob's ass, and the episode ends. But what happened with Gary and Snelly? Or just Snelly in general? Did Squidward just order Snelly to compete in the snail race and that's it? So that was the Great Snail Race, and, well, that sure was an episode from Season 3, alright. I guess I'll start off with the overbearing stuff just to get that over with. So SpongeBob wanted to enter Gary into the race because he was offended by Squidward's statements. I do understand SpongeBob's motives to do this because he wants to prove a point. It didn't seem too bad at first, but it got worse during the training montage. I don't have that much of a problem with the montage part of the episode, mostly just the infamous race sequence itself. As does everybody else. In my opinion, the real mean-spirited parts of the episode don't happen until the race itself starts. SpongeBob is such an oblivious jerk here. He's looking at Gary the whole time and he doesn't notice how tired Gary looks or that he's moving so slowly because of how clearly exhausted he is after being forced to train all night and pull SpongeBob to the stadium in a wagon. He's such a fucking prick in this one. I get that he just wants to beat Squidward and Snelly to prove a point, and he's blinded by his desire to do this to really see how Gary feels, but his desire feels more and more unjustified the more he's pushing Gary to the race. And even when he finally feels remorse after Gary got hurt, this line is said.
Oh, Gary, why did you tell me I wasn't listening? You did?
Sure, Gary didn't say that during the race itself, but I'm sure he said it at some point off screen either during the announcement part or just in between shots during the training part. But given how SpongeBob has been able to understand what Gary says to him...
Good idea, eh, Gary?
No.
Oh, what do you know? You're a snail.
I am stunned that SpongeBob didn't listen to Gary this much. It kind of feels out of character for him to be like this in my opinion, and that's saying something considering how this is supposed to be the era of the show that isn't mean-spirited and the characters are supposed to be in character. Is this supposed to be SpongeBob finally snapping and getting Gary to actually follow through with competing in the race after how Gary refused to take a bath in episode 66, Gary Takes a Bath from season 2? Because if so, then maybe this would have been better if Gary didn't have the car-like crash and explosion, but since that was probably not the case, then like I said, SpongeBob's desire becomes more unjustified the harsher he treats Gary. And even so, a bath was necessary for Gary in that episode, and just in general, while this race, not so much. Maybe if SpongeBob apologized for entering Gary in the race in the first place and changed his mind on the trophy, then maybe that would make this a little less mean-spirited and a bit redeemable, but still. Now with that being said, this could be worse, but not by much. As random as the two scenes with Sandy are, at least this provided some actual comeuppance for SpongeBob, and I always found it really funny when Sandy appears out of nowhere and kicks SpongeBob's ass, even if he didn't torture Gary and didn't need comeuppance per se. And speaking of comeuppance, wow, I said comeuppance like 4 times in 15 seconds. Let's go back to Season 2's I'm With Stupid, which has a very similar mean-spirited problem. In that one, SpongeBob made a plan with Patrick that SpongeBob would act dumb to make Patrick look smart in front of his parents. But Patrick ends up forgetting that plan and starts laughing at SpongeBob for no reason. And it gets worse as the episode goes on. And when SpongeBob finally snaps, he runs away and we don't see him for the rest of the episode. Then it's revealed that the 2 starfish,
Janet? Marty?
aren't Patrick's real parents.
Who are you people?
And his true parents show up with Squidward. Once the truth is found out, Janet and Marty leave Patrick with his real parents laughing, and the episode ends there. Patrick was never shown apologizing to SpongeBob for betraying him here. At least in Snail Race, SpongeBob did realize how he was pushing Gary too hard, even though it took him way too long to realize that, and he actually did apologize for pushing him too hard. Patrick never did that, and the laughing here went on for way too long that it just got annoying real quickly. SpongeBob may be the most unlikable he's ever been in the show up to this point, except for maybe episode 101, Party Pooper Pants, but at least I can appreciate that he did feel remorse for what he did to Gary here. I will also say that it wasn't actually annoying, like how Patrick and his parents were laughing at SpongeBob. And some parts I did kind of enjoy, like SpongeBob's scream here, as well as his angry babbling. I did not enjoy a single part of the race before Snelly went back to comfort Gary, and SpongeBob pushing Gary too hard was also in public for the whole crowd to see. And when I was a kid, it was hard for me to tell that when the crowd cheered, I couldn't tell if they were happy Gary crashed and he was disqualified, or happy that he survived the crash. And the fact it was unclear to me why the crowd reacted that way, that's just another factor I'm not a fan of. Gary also never stood up to SpongeBob when he was being treated this way, while SpongeBob at least tried to prove that he wasn't dumb. And Gary is capable of doing more than just listening to SpongeBob, as Gary Takes a Bath proves that Gary can move a ladder all on his own. So with all this in mind, which one did I like better? Well, it's a close call, but I think the theme of the episode and the motives behind everything make the Great Snail Race slightly worse than I Was Stupid, in my opinion. It's a very slight margin, but I'm going to go with this one being slightly worse, especially since this implies animal cruelty. If SpongeBob used this protein shake that Gary didn't want to eat, then maybe that would have made Gary win the race.
Gary? Wow, pretty good time.
Well, that's enough of a rant. Now I want to talk about the positives of this episode. I think the sequence of Lightning Larry Luciano barely making a quarter of the way across the stadium is pretty funny. I like Sandy's random appearances, I like when Squidward's last name kept getting mispronounced, and I love the gag where Patrick stood on Squidward's shoulders and fell when Squidward left. Of course, the ending with Snelly comforting Gary is very sweet, and so is Patrick engraving the trophy to Squidward, despite getting his last name wrong.
Will I ever win?
In the later seasons, the episode could still play out the same way, and SpongeBob would have gotten the trophy despite everything he did. I like Snelly a lot, and I wish we could have seen more with her, whether in this episode or just later in the series. I also like this line,
Are you thinking what I'm thinking? No!
I think that's about it in terms of the good. I know it wasn't a lot, but that's all I can say about the good. While I feel this isn't the best episode of the series, and it could be worse, there's just not that much here that does it for me in retrospect. This could have been better if it wasn't mean-spirited and Gary didn't feel like he was suffering in public, in my opinion. Or maybe if we saw more of Rocky. The Great Snail Race is a somewhat rough episode to sit through. It just kind of feels that SpongeBob is being too ruthless in this one, especially since it's to his own pet snail, Gary. If some of you like this one more than I Was Stupid, then that's fine. It can be tough too. But if it just didn't feel like this one was kind of dipping its toes into an animal cruelty theme, then maybe I wouldn't feel this way, but that's just how it is. You'd think this episode would be banned for its behavior, but it wasn't, because the next episode would be banned for the last 2 minutes or so. Midlife Crustacean is the episode where Mr. Krabs has a midlife crisis and wants to feel young by hanging out with SpongeBob and Patrick. Like the Great Snail Race, this episode aired on January 24, 2003, and is the second appearance of Mr. Krabs' mom, the first being episode 75, Sailor Mouth from season 2. Now this episode is just as notorious as its sister episode, but for different reasons. This has a lot of mature themes in it that may or may not have aged well, and even a scene that was so quote-unquote inappropriate for kids and shocking that it got the episode banned from Paramount+. What? What makes it more confusing is that it's been removed, re-uploaded, and delisted again a few times on other digital services in other countries. But currently on Paramount Plus in the US, The Great Snail Race is available to stream, but not Midlife Crustacean. That scene alone made this a very controversial episode, but thankfully not for being mean-spirited. Now, coming from a SpongeBob superfan, I don't think this episode should have been removed from digital services, whether or not it would be re-added later down the line. But that scene is all people talk about these days, which makes it worse than it really is. I personally never thought a SpongeBob episode would be banned in any way. I mean, if episode 360, SpongeBob You're Fired from season 9 is available to stream, why can't this one? So let's watch this episode and see if it really deserved to be removed from Paramount Plus in the first place. So the episode starts up and Mr. Krabs wakes up to a song telling the listener they're old, and Mr. Krabs takes notice of that when he's in the bathroom. When he goes downstairs, Pearl made him breakfast out of bran and gave him a comedically large pill. Mr. Krabs thought he was old, but Pearl says that's typical of a father. People don't even say cool in Bikini Bottom anymore and say coral. Mr. Krabs tried it himself, but Pearl hated that. When he left for work, Pearl said coral was out. That's true because I've never heard people say, "That's so coral," these days. On his way to work, Mr. Krabs was still being treated like he was an old coot by everybody around him, and he got more and more upset as time went on. He even thought some other elderly citizens were in line for the cemetery, but after he ran, the others were just in line for ice cream. Don't know how he didn't notice the cemetery the first time. At the Krusty Krab, a kid had an old dried out Krabby Patty and his mom told him to pitch it, but Mr. Krabs snagged it with plenty of time. Patrick arrived and he and SpongeBob were yelling in excitement about their plans until they were interrupted by Squidward. Mr. Krabs overheard their plans about going out for a big night on the town. He was soon caught and said that he wanted to come. Patrick wasn't sure because he and SpongeBob had their own style. So he tested Mr. Krabs with a secret cool guy handshake, and Mr. Krabs passed the test, but Patrick wasn't happy. Well, Mr. Krabs did fire Patrick from the Krusty Krab before, so I understand where Patrick's coming from. Mr. Krabs told them to arrive at 8, but due to their tendency to be fashionably late, they showed up at 8:01 p.m. When they arrived, they went back and forth on how they were ready to party until being interrupted by Pearl. Their snazzy ride Mr. Krabs hyped up was just a bike with 2 seats, and SpongeBob attached a wagon to the back so Mr. Krabs could come. On their ride, they were insulted by somebody in a speedboat calling them dorks, and Mr. Krabs said in his days they beat people up for saying something like that. It's true, I got beat up for saying a bunch of crap in middle school. Their first destination was a place called The Wash. Mr. Krabs thought it was a club, but when they went inside, it was just a laundromat. They stared at delicates through a rinse cycle. Mr. Krabs wanted to feel the wild and crazy feeling as if he was drunk and horny. But luckily, SpongeBob and Patrick had more plans. Next up, they just did community service, and Mr. Krabs still wasn't very happy. No matter where else they went, Mr. Krabs didn't feel it now at all.
Are you feeling it now, Mr. Krabs?
Just give him alcohol, and that'll do it no matter where you go. At their latest stop, Bunny Buns, he was wearing clown makeup and surrounded by kids playing Ring Around the Rosie. Mr. Krabs was feeling more humiliated and snapped at SpongeBob and Patrick, saying they were just nerds who didn't suggest a single cool thing all night. Well, if they were nerds or geeks, then they probably wouldn't have gone out at all. Mr. Krabs was about to leave, but not before Patrick brought up what would eventually get the episode banned. They were going to go on a panty raid, stealing ladies' underwear behind their backs. That's it? That's why this episode was banned? It wasn't because of child pornography? Mr. Krabs was excited and would take back what he said about them being lame.
Not lame.
Later on, they snuck in an open window and found some panties. But turns out they belonged to Mr. Krabs' mom. SpongeBob and Patrick ran away, and Mr. Krabs got grounded for the rest of the night. Later that night, SpongeBob apologized for getting Mr. Krabs in trouble, but Mr. Krabs was okay because being grounded by his mom at least made him feel young again. Mrs. Krabs told Mr. Krabs to turn off the lights, which he did, and the episode ends. So that was Midlife Crustacean, and that sure was another episode from Season 3, alright. Now right away, there are a lot more positives about this one compared to the previous. For starters, it's not mean-spirited, so that makes this better just for that reason alone. I found quite a bit more scenes and gags funny here, like Mr. Krabs' blinker and pill gags, the style and not lame freeze frames of SpongeBob and Patrick, the blink and you'll miss a shot of Patrick's gut, and the back and forth of the three being ready to party before Pearl got embarrassed. There are a lot of great character moments too. I like Patrick testing Mr. Krabs to see if he was cool. I like when SpongeBob is sorry for getting Mr. Krabs in trouble and Mr. Krabs forgives him without getting mad. And I like the yelling conversation between SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward. I love Pearl throughout the episode. I like how she makes breakfast for Mr. Krabs and how she gets annoyed by Mr. Krabs saying Coral, and when she's embarrassed over the trio in the middle of the episode. With how Mr. Krabs was occasionally used as a villain in Season 3, and a lot more from here on out, I really like him here. You really understand how he feels when he realizes how old he is and starts to worry about that. Obviously, the midlife crisis is something everybody goes through, but I do kind of like how it's implemented here. He just wants to feel young again and will do anything to make that happen. Even though most of what happened during the episode isn't particularly cool, I'd say it's better than nothing. I don't think anybody like that would make anybody feel young or cool per se, but doing anything with your friends is still worth it. And hanging out with your friends is always cool no matter what you all do together. I do like that's another moral you can walk away with after watching it, even though the story and main moral are about a midlife crisis. But now, it's time to address the elephant in the room. The main topic that got this episode banned from most digital services. The fact the three main characters of the story go on a panty raid. Now, the last time this episode aired on TV in a rerun was August 14, 2018. Paramount Plus wasn't a thing until March 4th, 2021, and the whole SpongeBob series at the time was put on there when it first came out. But then, on March 27th, it was revealed the episode would no longer air on TV, and it was pulled from multiple digital services as well. The panty raid scene here could be seen as a bad influence for children, and I can totally understand the concern for that. It is a kid's cartoon after all. However, even with that reasoning, I was never okay with the fact that this episode was banned, and it still didn't make complete sense to me. Yes, I agree. Kids shouldn't go on a panty raid because it's kind of wrong. But at the same time, I don't know a single person who actually went on a panty raid because they were influenced by this episode. And to any degenerate out there who actually did go on a panty raid, was it really this easy to do it? This house just had an open window and they were able to waltz right in without needing to unlock anything except the drawer itself. And it wasn't even locked. Yes, they are breaking and entering, but they don't break a single thing when they do this. And this is only the focus for the last 2 minutes or so of the episode, not the whole runtime or last 3 minutes. And Mr. Krabs got punished for touching the panties without permission, and it's not like all 3 characters were running away from the cops when they got caught. There were consequences, albeit only Mr. Krabs got punished, but still. And I'm sure whoever did go on a panty raid in real life did get punished in one way or another. But I would still say the panty raid scene is over-exaggerated, and it's far from the worst thing this franchise ever did. A bad example for kids? Yes, but far from the worst episode of the whole show. And there are episodes that have done even worse than this. Episode 263, One Course Meal from Season 7, has Plankton attempting to commit suicide. Why wasn't that episode banned from TV or streaming? Episode 332, Demolition Doofus from Season 8, has Mrs. Puff try to kill SpongeBob with a monster boat. Why wasn't that episode banned? Episodes 205, The Splinter from Season 6, and SpongeBob You're Fired from Season 9, those episodes speak for themselves. Episode 442, Ink Lemonade from Season 11, shows people drinking the black snot that Squidward shoots out from his nose when he's scared, and they liked it until they found out what it was. Why wasn't that episode banned either? Honestly, I can keep going. In my opinion, those episodes have done way worse than the panty raid. Now, I'm not saying I want those episodes to be banned either. I'm just saying that acting like this episode was the only episode of the entire main SpongeBob SquarePants series to not be available on Paramount Plus or any digital streaming service really, all because of a 2-minute scene that doesn't even play out in a realistic way, I think you really need to reevaluate your priorities. Especially those who chose to get this episode banned from streaming services, but no others from the show. So coming from a SpongeBob fanboy who needs easy access to all episodes of the main show, good or bad, I don't think this episode being banned was completely justified. And it's also extremely bizarre to go on Paramount Plus and see the Great Snail Race on here, but not Midlife Crustacean. And it's the only time in the series where this comes up. That's just another reason why physical media is important. And I'm thankful I have the Season 3 DVD with this episode available on it. That can never be ripped away from me. I mean, obviously I know it's a kid's show, so there's a limit as to how saucy they can actually get.
Yeah?
But a panty raid being the reason this episode was banned, I mean, really? A thing that didn't even end well for the characters?
Oh yeah.
I mean, if it was more about something like child pornography or Russian roulette, I'd understand why this episode was banned. Hell, at the very least, there was an episode from The Amanda Show from 2001 that ended with a meteor falling from the sky and destroying a family's house. It was banned at the time because it was similar to a real-world event that occurred that same year. Granted, it still wasn't an intentional parody, but they still banned it because of how reminiscent it was. If this episode dared to reference a controversial real-world event, then maybe that would be a bit more justified as to why this would have been banned, but no, it did not. And even then, the Amanda Show episode that was banned, it isn't banned anymore because they put it on DVD and it's on Paramount Plus to stream. So, if that episode was unbanned, then why isn't this one? Did they forget about the ban at the time and just put it on because? Or did they just not care about this episode referencing that real world event at the time? Because if they did care about that in the past, then why do they care about this panty raid now? I just don't get it, man. What are their priorities? Overall, Even with the controversy about the panty raid, I think this episode is fine. It's not the best of the show, but still far from the worst. There's a lot more funny in here than the last one, and the overall morals of the story are good takeaways in my opinion. I still won't get over this episode being removed from TV and streaming services, but at least this is the only time in the main SpongeBob SquarePants series that any kind of banned treatment actually occurred to a single episode. Oh. Midlife Crustacean is a fine episode in my opinion. It's got some really funny scenes and good morals, and when you disregard the controversy behind it, it's not a bad watch. As thankful as I am to have it on DVD, I will never not be agitated by the dumb decisions that Nickelodeon makes with this show, or all of their shows. But I will say, as usual, it could still be worse. This episode could have been banned because of a Russian roulette reference, which even the Rugrats didn't get away with, because it never happened.